Hello, everyone. I am Alban Huhmann, and today I am here to tell you about what we can do to help keep the wonderful world of plants and animals around for future generations. In order to do that, I'm going to have to talk about the threats that are currently posed to our ecosystems. But while the danger is serious, the first and most important step in preserving those ecosystems is not to give up on them. To get some context, we need to briefly talk about how modern-day extinction stands in terms of cause, severity, and timescale when compared to the big five mass extinctions of the past. Before that, though, I would like to mention how we measure some of the factors that I will discuss. The acidity of oceans is preserved in ocean sediments, as calcium carbonate will dissolve below a certain depth, and that depth is raised during periods of high acidity. Fossil soils and leaves can preserve a record of carbon dioxide, and oxygen isotopes in the shells of foraminifera can tell us what temperature was. That said, I will now provide you with a quick look into each of the mass extinctions, starting with the oldest and moving towards modern day and the extinction we are facing now. The Ordovician occurred in two pulses over approximately 1.4 million years, the first caused by severe cooling and glaciation, while the second pulse was caused by warming. Temperature changes would have been deadly in both pulses, but the chemistry of ocean water during the event was probably the bigger killer, specifically in the form of anoxic water, that is to say, water without oxygen in it. As a result, around 85% of marine species at the time and 80% of total species were killed during the Ordovician extinction. However, despite a net loss of species that makes it the second most severe mass extinction to have ever occurred on this Earth, all of the major families of life survived this event. The late Devonian extinction coincided with significant global cooling, generally accepted to have been caused by plants spreading further inland and causing weathering, that is to say, breaking down rocks. Nutrients from the newly weathered rocks found their way into the oceans, causing massive algal blooms that left a lot of anoxic water in their wake, much like the Ordovician. Our estimates of the number of species lost during this event ranges anywhere from 70% to 82%, and the exact duration of this event is debatable, but 50,000 years serves as a relatively minimal estimate. The Permian extinction was the most severe extinction of all, eliminating an approximate 96% of all species and earning the nickname the Great Dying. All of this occurred within 200,000 years as a result of extreme volcanism in what is now Siberia. This volcanism caused global warming, acid rain from sulfuric gases, severely increased atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, and also caused an extreme increase in ocean acidity due to oceans absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The Triassic extinction, much like the Permian before it, was caused by a major and sustained increase in volcanic activity, but this time located in the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, which would go on to become our modern-day Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Fortunately, the severity of this volcanism was not as severe, and as a result, more species survived, with a total loss of about 80% of species, a number that can only be considered small by comparison. The causes of extinction are also similar to the Permian: global warming, acid rain, increased carbon dioxide, and ocean acidification. Lastly, for our historic extinctions, is the most famous mass extinction of all, the Cretaceous extinction, as both it and the dinosaurs that it wiped out have captured our species' collective imagination since we first learned of them. The cause is generally considered to be an asteroid impact off the Yucatan coast, and the timing of the impact does line up with the extinction, but new data suggests that several other processes, such as volcanism in India, may have had their part to play in the extinction. Using radiometric, measuring radioactivity, age dating, geologists have found that the timing of these volcanic eruptions is appropriate for them to have played a role in this extinction, but we are unable to determine whether they or the asteroid was the main cause. Regardless, due to both the immediate impact of the asteroid causing wildfires and a prolonged decrease in temperature due to ash and debris, either from the asteroid or the volcanoes, but most likely both, 76% of all species at the time were lost during the event. With our understanding of past extinctions in place, what do we know about extinction today? To begin with, modern-day conditions are more similar to those of the Permian or Triassic, as carbon emissions from burning fossil fuels are causing our oceans to become acidic and global temperatures to rise, as well as increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Ocean acidification weakens the shells of many creatures, such as crustaceans and mollusks, and when combined with rising temperatures, it decimates coral reefs. The temperatures on their own change the habitable range for species of both plants and animals, and can lead to them migrating to areas that are unfamiliar to them with characteristics such as disease. However, humans are causing more than just that, too. Waste heavy with nutrients such as phosphate and nitrate prompts algae blooms that lead to anoxic waters, like those seen in the late Devonian or Indo-Ordovician. We cut and burn rainforests, causing destruction somewhat akin to that of the Cretaceous asteroid impact. Humans have always had an effect on the environment, but the most severe effects are due to our industrialization. Michael Mann's famous hockey stick curve shows that within the last 200 years, humans have caused climate change on a scale that would take tens of thousands of years to occur in nature. As you might expect, many species are not faring well in these conditions, but in order to quantify exactly how they are affected, we need to understand background extinction rates, the rates at which species would go extinct without human input. This can be difficult to calculate, but a rough estimate would be 2 species of mammals per 10,000 species per 100 years, or 2 extinctions per million species years. This type of calculation is particularly useful because the severity of a given amount of extinctions is more meaningful when it is relative to the total amount of species at the time. Our actual modern extinction rate is not easy to measure either, as it can be difficult to tell if an animal species is entirely gone, or how many animal species there are in the first place for that matter. But we estimate that within the past century, we may be up to 100 times above the background extinction rate. We may not know what percent of species we've lost in the last 100 years, but we do know that almost 70% of the wildlife population has been lost since 1970, and more than 1 in 4 species today are endangered. So, what can we do about this? Well, climate change is the root cause, so all our attempts to reduce climate change will help to reduce the number of species going extinct. A lot of people are working towards mitigating climate change already, and we know roughly what we need to do to stop things from getting worse in the long run. That is pretty good, all things considered. However, the climate change we've caused hasn't all been resolved yet, so more species would go extinct even after climate change has been fixed. And actually fixing it would take some time and potentially require technological advancements. What can we do for animals specifically? Well, many endangered animals can be preserved as a captive population and eventually reintroduced. This process was performed with the red wolf but ran into complications. While we have been able to keep a somewhat decent population in captivity, an attempt to reintroduce them to the wild failed and resulted in the loss of most of the released creatures, many of them to poachers, disease, or vehicle collisions. Clearly, preparatory measures must be taken before we can reintroduce animals. There is also the issue of animals that are not as charismatic as the red wolf, such as the California condor, and animals that are difficult to maintain a captive population of, such as polar bears. In many cases, conservation efforts are more focused on preserving a wild population, even if they are endangered, than maintaining one in captivity, as the latter can lead to unexpected difficulties, such as disease upon reintroduction. However, even with the difficulties of these solutions, they are preferable to allowing the situation to continue as it is today. And given some legislature, we could make some big changes that could help to preserve animals and plants. For example, A bill that is currently in the process of being approved in Virginia, Bill HB 395, would allow people to operate a type of plug-in solar panel that is popular in Europe. This bill is really focused on humans, but it would help to mitigate global warming since people would be able to produce their own solar power more easily. And, as such, it would be beneficial for animals. Many bills that never even mention animals in their text can have a profound effect on them, so I'll quickly run through some changes that we could make on a grand scale to help animals before moving on to a more personal level. Switching from our current car-based society to one that relies more on trains would result in lower greenhouse gases, fewer vehicle collisions, and less disruption of the surrounding environment. Walkable cities accomplish much of the same things. Clean energy both reduces emissions and the risk for oil spills, and expansion of, better funding for, and new parks in the national park system helps to provide animals with a safe environment in which to live. I suggest voting yourself, as well as calling your representative to let them hear how their constituents think they should vote. This goes for issues that don't directly affect animals too. Your vote is your strongest tool. Now, onto a more personal level. If you own a pet, you should spay and neuter them, and keep them inside. Dogs and cats, especially cats, can be a big risk to animals living nearby. If you don't own a pet but want to have one, you should adopt rather than buying from a breeder. This helps animal shelters take in more strays, which makes wildlife safer, but it's also more humane for the animal. For lifestyle changes, you can of course try a vegetarian or vegan diet, but there are many smaller steps that may be easier or more appealing for some people. For one, try to eat everything you make or order. Even if you can't finish it right away, consider refrigerating it for later or to make a different dish. Having a metal straw to use in place of plastic ones helps reduce the amount of waste we generate, but also lowers your microplastic intake. Avoiding fast fashion brands will be easier on your wallet in the long term, but also prevents waste from the creation of and disposal of the product, as well as emissions from bulk transport. And last but not least, talking about the environment with friends and family is a great way to spread information, as well as to learn new things that you can do. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and remember, the first step forwards is to choose not to give up.